I'm often reminded that the nature of the war dictates the nature of the peace. Conflict is often seen as a negative force within teams. But what if I told you that managed conflict can actually lead to innovation and create stronger bonds? I'm American Leadership Developed. This week we're going to talk about debunking the myths of conflict within your organization. So let's get to the heart of the matter. Let's talk about what is conflict. Conflict is any time that you have two individuals or two parties that have a dissimilar version of something, perception of something. When we think of conflict, we're thinking of armed conflict. When we think of fights, we think of disagreements. Those are in spectrums, ranges, things that if brought to a proper perspective or proper degree will allow conflict to be a way to develop great solutions. Usually when conflict arises within our teams, within our organizations, it's usually a disagreement about how to solve the problem, creative differences, or just opinions of strategies. There's no perfect answer. So we all, even though we believe that our plan, our answer is perfect, but by putting in the pieces that work well together, we get a good enough answer. And trust me, good enough answers, good enough solutions go much further than optimal solutions because the way they're sustainable. When you're able to get everybody on the same page for something that's good enough, that is more sustainable than somebody's great optimal idea that doesn't have the total buy-in, that everyone does not have true faith and trust in. Conflict isn't necessarily inherently negative if, as leaders, we put in the correct processes to manage it. And what I mean by that is the ability to create the rules of war, the rules of conflict that you have within your culture, within your organization. I encourage my people to have arguments, disagreements, but these things, there's certain things that can't exist. Blame is one of them. You cannot blame each other. You cannot blame one, you can't blame the other. You can take blame upon yourself, and that's about as far as I'll let it go. You can point out external factors, but you have to show me what you can control and what you cannot control, and then how you work around with those. And another rule is you have to admit what is an assumption and what is researched knowledge. Because the biggest problem that we have with our conflicts is the perception of the mess, how we view the challenge that lays in front of us. As my good friend would say, I walked out of that meeting that we had watched interpretive dance. He took away one thing differently than I took away. We didn't have an argument, we sat there, laughed about it, and then worked our way through what do we agree that we seen and what are the things that we saw differently. And how would they work together, or do they work together, or the answer somewhere in between. You can create conflict within your team that makes sense, that pushes your people to that next step better. But you have to pay attention to how you do that. Most times it's just a matter of using an outside stimulus. Most leaders think they have to be the bad guy to create a strong bond for them to work against, and that's something that we see in the Marine Corps. Right off the bat, when the drill instructor is our enemy of the candidates or of the recruits, and we have to come together to prove that we can work together as a team and prove the drill instructor wrong. But if you can use an outside influence, like the competition or the facts of life, things that the challenges that you're trying to overcome, to motivate them. How do we step this up? How do we make this better? Now we're making a conflict of us versus them versus us versus us. In doing so, now we're rising to the occasion. Most breakdowns that happen in the conflict, when you use an outside source, though, is it comes back to internal. I'll liken it to a football game. When one team comes together and does everything perfectly, makes the least amount of mistakes, it frustrates the other team, and they get frustrated amongst themselves and start blaming each other and falling apart. Now there's conflict within them and no longer conflict between the two teams. That's the same that I want you to think about when you're trying to create the conflict for your people to rise to the occasion. Make sure that it keeps it on the outside sources and not within the organization itself. Be smart about it. When we approach conflict constructively, we start creating innovation. We start creating answers that we didn't think were possible, because we fall in love with our own answers that we grew up with. We know that this course of action gets this result, and this is how we always done it, and it's perfect. However, when you use collaboration and use this best idea and that best idea, and they come together, and then we expect something to happen, then we're able to go further beyond than just how we've always done it. What scares people from this is they don't know what the expected result is. And if it doesn't take off right away, they start blaming your part failed. No, your part failed. But by having the patience to let it grow, to keep stimulating it, to keep solving it, you can't just answer it and forget about it. That's the most important step that you have in your planning process is step 6, which is continually monitor the environment and the process as it goes and give direct steers to keep it growing better. See, everyone's got this, I got a challenge, I'm going to solve the challenge, and then it's behind me, I move on. But you can't do that. Once you see, most times you see the challenge, you have to make sure that, you have to monitor and make sure that it's progressing to the right point, to the point where it is self-sustainable. But without that monitoring, this set it and forget it attitude leads to more failures than most organizations realize. A great thing also is the building of when these teams come together through conflict and they answer through collaboration. It builds a stronger team. They learned that together they're able to overcome the challenge that no one thought they could succeed over. And that's great that they are able to come together, collaborate, and just be the force that overcomes the powers against them. And then they start relying upon each other much greater, and they start working together much greater. The thing that always strikes me with conflict and conflict resolution is the nature of the war determines the nature of the peace. This was a statement that was true to the United States back in the Revolutionary War when George Washington fought the revolution as an armed, uniformed army versus the rebellion, hit and runs, do whatever we can to beat the British. He knew that to win the support, to win the recognition from other countries as our own new country, we had to fight the war within the proper respects that others would accept to. We find that still continuously works. The respect the United States gets through its armed conflict is the way we fight the war, because we know that the nature of the peace is going to be the most important part. The opposite of that would be the French Revolution, where it was totally a hit and run ragtag thing, where it took them forever to be able to establish a government in which they got Napoleon. So understand the way that your organization, your team argues will determine how they work with each other afterwards, how they will, become a stronger team, because the way they argued constructively in a matter that allowed them to share, listen, and work through the opposite, the opposing ideas and be able to collaborate. Once you get past the conflict, can they work well together afterwards, or will they be besmudging? That's why I want to eliminate the blame. When you eliminate the blame, by not eliminating the blame, people don't want to work with each other. And then they're quick to point at the other saying, see, it's their fault this didn't work, when it just needed a little bit more time to blossom. By having this idea, by keeping the statement of the nature of the war determines the nature of the peace, will help you as a leader be able to allow your people to have these disagreements, but still have faith that at the end they will work well together. And pretty much how we argue to reach solutions directly impacts how we work together once the dust settles. Conflict isn't always negative. It can drive innovation and strengthen team bonds when managed effectively. It encourages people to embrace conflict as an opportunity for growth and improvement within the teams. Conflict isn't the enemy. It's a catalyst for positive change and stronger team dynamics. I'm Eric with Leadership Developed. If you like this video, hey, do us a favor, give us a thumbs up. While you're at it, hit subscribe. Help us tell YouTube that this needs to go out to more people so we can have a stronger communities. If you missed last week's video, hey, check it out, it's right over here. And if you missed any of our other videos, check them right over here. We'll talk to you again next video.